everybody. How's everybody doing this morning? No, do I need to translate? How's everybody doing this morning? Good. All right. Thank you all for coming and sitting in on this panel. I think we've got a very interesting conversation going on here. Just a quick show of hands. How many of you carry your physical wallets with you, like right now? Who have with cash? Okay, not too many. How many of you are using like digital wallets, like Google Pay, Apple Pay? Oh, great, a lot more. I think the conversation we're gonna have today somewhat revolves around, the duality of, having a physical wallet, owning your cash, and, having your assets managed digitally. So my name is Fred. I'm at The Block. I've spent a number of years working with institutional clients as the head of APAC at Masari, at Cointelegraph, and now I'm doing, more revenue and growth at The Block. So I have a very interesting lineup of panels. I want to get each of them to introduce themselves very quickly, talk about, give us your name, the company that you represent, and, quick two-liners about what solutions you provide everybody out here. Like, let's start with you.
Yeah, so my name is Nick, and I'm representing Trust Wallet today. So for those of you who don't know, it's the #1 mobile wallet with over $220 million worldwide. It allows you to hold kind of any crypto in your pocket for totally free, and we're trying to empower users to basically have the freedom of their funds without any barriers to entry. So there's no upfront cost. It's a free app, and you can use it across iOS, Android, and browser extension.
Yep. Hi, my name is Taka. I represent Ledger and Ledger Enterprise. We have been in business for 12 years. We secure about 20 to 25% of the crypto market cap. And obviously, I think a lot of people who's gone into the crypto industry has a Ledger wallet at some point in their lives, and I'd love to share a lot of insights with you guys. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pascal. I represent Exodus Wallet. We are one of the leading self-custody wallets out there. Also, the first wallet actually to IPO on New York Stock Exchange. We provide, on the one hand, of course, the user-facing wallet, but we also have a lot of B2B products. We provide swaps for other wallets out there, and we also have a cards business. So happy to provide more insights into features that we provide here, and also how they help with future improving the user experience in the future.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shawn. I'm the VP of Asia Pacific for Hypernative. So Hypernative, a quick introduction of the company. We service more than 300 plus different clients, both crypto native and also traditional institutions, where we provide what we call real-time security monitoring. So you can think of us like the Cloudflare antivirus layer for threat detection, threat prevention, and we work with quite a number of like self-custodial wallets and also wallet technology companies. So that includes some of the largest financial institutions, like Circle for stablecoin issuers, payment providers, to make sure that their users' funds are safe, and also if let's say they have assets that are sitting on chain, before any hacks and exploits it happens, we're able to detect that and prevent any hacks kind of entering their ecosystem.
Morning, everyone. I'm Lee Skinner. I work for Tangem. I'm the Retail Global Business Development Manager. So for Tangem, we're obviously one of the leaders in the cold storage wallet in different form factors. So we have the traditional wallet, and we also have the crypto ring, which was one of the first patented crypto rings on the market.
Cool. Just so that you guys have a context of who is speaking to what. For self-custody, we have two solutions, right? We've got like your hot wallets, we've got your cold wallets. So those of you who kind of associate as a hot wallet, raise your hand, right? This means very quick, easy access, allow you to move your money very, very quickly. The cold wallet guys, yep, these guys keep your money safe, they're like your physical wallets, okay? And then Shawn over here, he's like the security layer. He's the bouncer, making sure your money doesn't go where it doesn't want to go. So here's the kicker. Like right now, let's say I'm somebody who only uses a centralized exchange. Oh, that's terrible. And like I don't own my own assets in that capacity, right? So hopefully by the end of today's session, I want to have all of you be in my position and be able to understand the solutions these guys provide and the very interesting new technologies that we're moving forward, especially in the age of AI. All right, so the first question, right? Why do we need like self-custody solutions, and what does it mean for us today? Like maybe Nick, we can start with you.
Yeah, so I want to take it back for a little bit of a history lesson. So I don't know how long most of you have been in the space, but some time ago there was a collapse of FTX. So again, whenever you hold funds on a centralized exchange, you have a collateral risk. If something were to happen to that centralized exchange, let's say something were to happen to you, whatever it might be, then your funds are locked there. This is something that many people faced, and the idea of holding funds in your own wallet basically prevents you from having a third-party risk, let's say. Because let's say one of the major wallets died today. It doesn't matter. You have the seed phrase, so you can import it to any other big wallet, and you still have control of your funds. So again, you're not being blocked by a central authority. No one can take away your funds. And this is kind of one of the key pillars of what it means to have money under your control. This is self-custody, right? Aside from just being on a centralized exchange, there's a lot of benefits in self-custody, such as being able to trade assets that maybe a centralized exchange hasn't listed yet. You can also do Aave or kind of yield-bearing ideas that aren't automatically opted in for you. So if you might hold funds on Coinbase, Binance, whatever it might be, they're kind of earning passive yield on your assets, right? Because they might be lending it out, whatever it might be. Why should you give a centralized exchange that money or get a fraction of a penny like a bank when you can do it yourself? The idea of serious ownership basically comes down to the principle of it's your money, you should use it how you would like to. You shouldn't be held up by a centralized exchange or blocked by KYC. A lot of our users come from emerging regions where they may not be able to get a centralized exchange account because they don't have IDs or kind of these banking records or all of these other things. So we see a lot of people download Trust Wallet and they will just buy USDC, maybe it's P2P on-ramp, whatever it is, and they're hedging against local inflation. This isn't possible for them in the traditional centralized manner on a centralized exchange. So you really see this new era of people who are, for the first time, getting able to digitally interact without having to kind of dox themselves or get KYC'd or all of these other gateways that prevent some of these people from getting into the industry.
Pascal, I think you guys are working quite heavily on like the user experience, in form of hot wallets, and really trying to increase accessibility across multi-chain. I mean, you guys do chain abstraction really, really well, but you guys are basically trying to, I would say you guys are the designer hot wallets, basically. So what are your thoughts and sentiments on this?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, great explanation from Nick here. I think that's how I would put it in the books as well, when I would explain self-custody wallets to people. From our perspective, Exodus has always been on the forefront of UX, UI leadership. So we want to create the cleanest, most smoothest experience for our users so they can access crypto easily, they can create accounts easily, but we also want to give them more utility to the wallet. So it's almost like mimicking what we see in traditional fintech space also with super apps and stuff like this, because in the end of the day, what we created now is a wallet where you can hold crypto, you can access DeFi, but what goes beyond this is other features that have to enable users to do their day-to-day stuff also with this wallet, same as with your neobank, which includes adding a crypto card, for instance. We were one of the first to have a crypto card as well, so you can now have your funds there, maybe you make some profits, and you can also seamlessly spend. You add the card to Apple Pay, you can spend it at global merchants, and beyond this, adding more features such as staking, of course, swapping. So that's just, I think, really important to get also new users into self-custody in the future, to give them pretty much the same experience they already know and are familiar with from the traditional finance or like fintech space, such as contestants like Revolut or something like this.
So Taka, I think Ledger has been around, for a very, very long time. And I think one of the famous sayings is not your, what was it?
Don't trust verify.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have that saying, don't trust, verify, right? So, what's your take as being one of the original, kind of hardware devices?
So you want me to elaborate on don't trust, verify? Is that your question? Yeah. So I actually like to add a little bit more to that. I mean, I would really say, I mean, even if you're working even outside of crypto, wherever, right? I mean, I do remember, when I was still in school, and my teacher, my mother, my teacher would tell me, like, you don't need to be the fastest. Be careful, make sure everything's correct before you hand in your work, right? And I think that goes for everything in terms of crypto as well. Like, just because you're a second earlier doesn't mean that you can get something done, perfectly, right? So, and I always tell that to my kids too. Like, you don't need to hand in your work earlier. So I repeat the same thing. But so generally, if I elaborate on that and say, don't guess, don't assume, and don't trust, but make sure that you verify it, right? So that, I think that's, if you think about like a lot of things that you do in crypto that freaks you out, there's I would say there's 3 things that freaks me out all the time: is losing my seed phrases, right? And then having to look at the wallet address, which is like just a hash of like different numbers and letters. And I'm sure most people only look at the first 4 or 5 letters and the last 4 or 5 letters and say, okay, fine, let's go, right? And then the last thing is like, where am I sending it to, right? So I don't know if the wallet address that I need to send it to is actually correct, or the smart contract I'm going to send it to is correct. So in that way, like, I think Ledger has been trying to identify those hard things that people encounter in transacting on the blockchain to make it easier for people to do it. So obviously we have created a few products on Ledger where you don't have to like write everything down. Obviously we have this recovery card that you can store your recovery key, so that even if your those paper things that you write all the seed phrases on gets burnt, you still have something else that you can recover your seed phrases. We have clear signing now. So I remember when I first got into crypto, I had these like Ledger Nanos that were super hard to look at, and it looks like a thumb drive. But now we have like these touchscreen devices where you can actually look at it and reconfirm where you're sending it to. So it's much easier to look at now. And then we have transaction checks. Like we work with like Hypernative and all those other companies that when you send funds, you're not sending it to any faulty addresses or compromised smart contracts.
Right, Lee. So as a hardware wallet, you guys are going for a much sleeker form factor. You're not carrying this massive hard disk drive around. It's a simple form factor as a ring or as a card. But to some degree, you compromise on a little bit of that, verify layer. Like, what's Tangent's angle on, the solution of self-custody?
I think Tangent's core message is to onboard as many people in a safe and secure and swift element as possible. So I think the hardware wallets are not, they're a lot more than a tech gadget, right? So we feel we're more than capable of
So Shawn, I mean, with all of these guys, you've worked with most of them, as a security layer. Can you share with us a little bit about how Hypernative is becoming like the firewall of like self-custody, and how do you enable this safe but seamless transaction that doesn't take like 2 minutes to verify?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I think like what the panelists have shared and advocate for self-custody, which is the title of the panel today, is that, I believe a lot of people in the room knows this kind of a famous saying, with greater power comes with greater responsibility, right? And, when you pass the power to the user, essentially if you operate on a blockchain, you know that it can be quite complex and sophisticated. So the thing that what Hypernative does, and we work with both institutions and also retail-facing wallets, like the ones that are represented here, is that we make context a lot easier to understand, right? What you're signing, what you are trying to track, like are you sending to a poison address, are you sending to a scammer wallets, all that is detected on a real-time basis. So we are talking about in seconds before any transaction that is fired up, right, that is broadcasted on the blockchain. This is already scanned through us before it hits the blockchain. So for institutional level security, this will be blocked immediately. For retail facing wallets, usually the power lies with the retail user because of the whole spirit of self-custody. You can choose to ignore that, but typically for a lot of the self-custodial wallets, they will say that, warning, take a step back. This is what we have detected through our vendor, like Hypernative, right? And do you want to still proceed, right? So that is how we have been working with both institutions that use different type of wallet infrastructure and for retail-facing wallets too.
So I think all of us are game for the mass adoption cycle, right? Where retail come in, like mass institution volume ramps up. So what are we, looking forward to, and what are you guys doing, to position yourself to catch this massive influx of the populace, and what are we doing to educate people that it's like not your keys, not your Bitcoin, right? I think that was the saying. So I'm quite interested to hear what you guys are doing, particularly to position yourself to catch this wave of mass adoption. And maybe we can start with you, Taka.
So if we compare hardware wallets to software wallets, obviously it's not free, right? So we can't just like download it on your phone. There is a friction point where you have to actually spend money to buy our hardware wallets. So, we try to make it as sexy as possible for people to buy it. So, as I mentioned earlier, it looked like a thumb drive at first, right? I mean, it's a very difficult device where you had like two little buttons on the side where you had to click, and then, do your passwords. It's a massive friction for anybody. And if I had to give it to my mother or whoever it is, they're not gonna use it. It's really hard to use. And then we came up with a touchscreen device. Now, we're all, comfortable with their smartphones and touchscreens. So obviously, we followed that trend, right? So I think the next evolution of like what we were trying to do is make sure that it's something that everybody's like used to. It's comfortable to use. It's sexy to hold. You can show people, and it's part of your everyday life. And then, as our CEO always said that, everything in our life is going to be digitized, whether it be not just your crypto, it's your identity, it's your medical data, et cetera. Everything's going to be digitized, and you need a privacy for that. So you need a certain device that actually can hold these things that can't be compromised by AI or any sovereign nation or whatever it is, and it has to be with you at all times, and you have to be comfortable holding that thing. So that's kind of like the way that we actually think about design and how to make it part of people's everyday life.
I think literally people did use thumb drives in very early days, and we hear so many horror stories of people losing thumb drives with hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin, right? And Lee, when we talk about design and form factor, why do you think how the product looks and how it interacts with when you want to do settlement or do transfers is so important?
I think Taka's legacy with your own form factor, we've tried to break the mold in terms of what we're trying to do. So with our own hot wallets and our crypto ring, it's something that's tangible, hence Tangem, and it's something that we're very proud of, to break this traditional mold. And we never say there's anything wrong with the legacy factor. It's the OG. It laid the foundations for what we're doing right now. But for us, we're trying to go down a different avenue and a different pioneering aspect, and also using the form factor of a phone, which we're all more than comfortable using on a daily basis. So those two elements together for us just work seamlessly.
But Nick, I think you guys have a completely different thesis, right? It's not about form factor. It's really about having that interoperability, that accessibility, that you're plugged in everywhere with as little barrier as possible. Like,
Yeah, exactly. So if we take it back to when Trust Wallet was originally founded by a guy named Victor many years ago, he simply just wanted to hold meme coins in his pocket. He didn't want to carry a device. He just wanted to have an app that he could just basically hold. Today, Trust Wallet supports over 120 chains. And we talked about the friction points coming from centralized exchanges to a wallet. So when you're operating on a scale of, let's say, 220 million, you have everybody. You have the pros who want to trade 50x leverage on this meme coin. You have people who are buying stablecoin to hedge against local inflation. You have people who are using P2P because they need to pay their employees, or maybe they need to pay a friend or a family member overseas. This is cross-border payments, remittance. Everybody kind of knows this narrative. So you really have to cater to a wide audience. And when you're catering to such a large audience, you have to remove frictions. For example, one of the biggest pain points for on-chain interactions today is gas. So if you don't know, let's pretend someone sends you some USDC or USDT. Let's say it's on Ethereum. If you wanted to send that USDC or USDT to someone else, you would need native token in your wallet. We call this gas, right? So this is like your transaction fees. We are trying to work very closely with MEV and block builders to kind of eliminate this. So for example, we can even, when you're trying to make a swap, if we notice that your wallet address has 0, Trust Wallet will just sponsor it for like BSC, Ethereum, Solana, and then the transaction will actually land. So in traditional Web 2, maybe on a centralized exchange, you would just click buy or sell. You don't even think about gas. And the idea of moving to a wallet is now I need to know, hey, that there's this gas thing, or maybe there's this slippage, or there's different types of gas, or there's price impact, or different kind of risks. The more friction points you have for users, the harder it is for them to actually complete the task they're trying to do. If I have to go through 50 different steps to just send somebody money, I would rather just reach into my wallet and hand them a 50. Like, there's no way I'm gonna do that. And if we can't make that simple, then no one's gonna use it. I mean, today we've been very successful in getting 220 million downloads, but I'm not interested in millions. I'm interested in getting the next billion people on chain. And that's not gonna happen by having friction points. It's gonna be, it has to be the Venmo, the PayPal experience, the WeChat, just scan somebody, send it, forget about it. And I think that's what we're really trying to strive to aim and solve that problem at Trust Wallet. That's why there's no barrier to entry. It's a free app. We cater to everybody. Doesn't matter if you're a pro or a newbie, what chain you want to be on. We try to make it as easy as possible for you to work with that.
I think with you guys, and once you when you remove the chain, when you remove the gas, you know, it's pretty much simulating the experience of a centralized exchange, but you know, via a decentralized dApp, right? And with Exodus, I mean, you guys are trying to improve the user experience. So they are doing so much, and it sounds fantastic. I'm almost sold. Like, what are you doing to step it up or kick it up that's different?
Yeah, I think from our side, what we are trying to do right now is we try, as I explained earlier already, to give users more utility in the real world as well, if I can call it that way. At the one hand, of course, the card, that was the first thing. I think last year we took a very big step in general in this industry with cards, because companies like Cast came out and it really became a thing. Like these card programs, they're producing a lot of volumes and people actually use them for spending day-to-day for their day-to-day expenses. But one more thing we're really looking into right now is actually also direct QR code-based payments. So we acquired a few companies already last year and early this year to enable us to do that, which literally means you can go into a restaurant. Well, actually, we launched this last month, Exodus Pay. So in the US, you can go into the restaurant and you can scan a QR code with Exodus Pay, and you can already pay for your restaurant bill just using Exodus Pay. You don't even need to use a card or anything like this. And we will actually put a lot of resources behind this in the upcoming months and years to incentivize users to use Exodus Pay. We'll provide incentives for this as well and grow it more and more across US and LATAM and later also across the rest of the world, so to speak.
Shawn, I want to pivot the conversation a little bit. I think as somebody who's worked with a lot of like traditional financial institutions, as they start to get educated and they try to come on chain, like where do you think the biggest security risk, or what do you think are the biggest factors in a hot wallet or cold wallet that financial institutions are going to look for? Is it really accessibility, or is it security? What's your take on this?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So you guys probably see like I'm dressed slightly different from the rest of the crowd here on the panel, because I have a meeting with the local regulators and a couple of financial institutions. because the work that we do is a lot of which is really increasing the institutional knowledge of operating on public permissionless blockchains, right? So I think there is always a evil or kind of a misconception that there is a lot of bad things that's happening on public permissionless blockchains and that cannot be controlled in some way, but that's not that true, right? So with a lot of solutions, not just us, there's a lot of people that's advancing controls, safeguards that can actually protect users' funds at the end of the day, right? This is helping a lot of this institutional adoption that is happening. So it's not so much of accessibility and all that, but you've probably seen in the recent cases, $200 million were lost over the last 1 week because of a huge hack. How do you put safeguards around that, right? So those are some of the things that we're working with institutions to make sure that wallet layer choice is very critical, but after that, what are some additional security tooling that you need to put to ensure that you have 360-degree coverage?
So Sean's saying the wallet's not important. Security layer after the wallet's important. Do you guys have any counterpoints to that? Anybody want to go?
No, I think the foremost point is trust. Like, that's in the name of our wallet. If you don't have trust with what you're using, then you shouldn't be using it. It's kind of like the idea of you wouldn't leave your house and leave all of the doors open, right? The saying is, not your keys, not your crypto. I think that was what you were going for earlier. The same idea applies. I think what most people don't understand is if you do a swap in a hot wallet, let's say you go to a swap provider like 1inch, 0x, whoever it might be, and you click the approve. A lot of these approvals are kind of just like giving someone the keys to your house. And people don't understand that if the smart contract were to be exploited or something like that, all of the approves you've ever clicked in your life could just instantly wipe out your wallet. So we spend a lot of time talking with different security vendors and how can we block and prevent users from clicking on something they shouldn't, right? It's no secret that crypto is plagued with scams, right? It's a brand new industry. People don't know what it is. We were just talking behind stage about, people in an older generation who are now getting into crypto because they heard so much about it on the news are falling from these scams. At the same time, we can do a lot to prevent. We could just outright block malicious websites. But then again, we're stopping users from having the freedom of choice. And then tomorrow, 50 more are going to turn up because if I block one URL, there'll be a new one tomorrow. So the biggest problem is how much can you do? And I know that as a security vendor, you're constantly adding more and more and more and more, and there's never a perfect solution. It really comes down to educating the end user. Like we were just talking backstage, if someone comes up to you and says like, help me with my wallet, and they hand over their phone, that's like handing over your credit card or your bank account or your social security number. Like you wouldn't do that to a normal person that you don't know. People in traditional banks, like with their checkbook, they're not just gonna hand that over to somebody. I think today people are a bit too trusting, especially in the blockchain space. Not that I'm saying you shouldn't trust everybody out there, but at the same time, you need to be respectful of the fact that it is self-custody and it is your keys, your crypto. The minute you give it away, it's no longer your crypto.
So Taka, I know you guys specifically are gearing to you have a product that specifically targets institutions. Would love to hear a bit more about that because we talk about form factor, we talk about accessibility. Are institutions looking to be able to hold their assets and deploy them into yield-bearing products? Is that going to be a major factor of concern, which is why you guys are pivoting beyond just the hardware wallet?
Yeah, I mean, we back in 2017 when we saw the whole crypto like just blossom into this massive thing, I think the people at Ledger thought, okay, well then banks are going to come in. So that's the origin of the Ledger Enterprise product. And what these financial institutions and then their auditors too, when they look at the how to store assets, it's a lot of the products that are in the market today is very much software driven. It's very much mathematically driven. And if you want to convince your auditors that you have your assets with you, you can't really point to a mathematical problem and say, hey, I split these wallets, these private keys into multiple pieces and they're all stored in cloud and it's encrypted. It's very hard for banks to convince the auditors and the regulators of that. So what we built is a more a normal solution. I would say it's a bit more boring solution where you can store your private keys in your own company, and you could just point to it and say, hey, my private keys are right there. And that's the type of pace that we need to build things with more traditional businesses, because I know that in crypto, like, we want to do all fancy stuff, innovate, but the real world doesn't move in that kind of space, right? I think we need to meet them where they are, and we build solutions that are based on systems that they already know, which is HSM, and then it's on their premises, and they could point to where the private keys are. And this is kind of the base layer that they need. And then on top of that, as you mentioned, they want yield generation, they want to tokenize assets, they want stable coins. Obviously, those things are also equipped with those things. And that's kind of the way that, slow-paced movement that we're providing for the financial institutions.
Awesome. I think those are some fantastic responses. I think that's all we have on time. I want all of you to just leave the audience with, like a one-liner, right, for why you think your self-custody solution is the best, right? Convince me. All right, Lee, let's go.
I think the fact that we're completely frictionless, and then you're using something that you're using every single day of your life, which is your phone, with our tangible experience with our wallet and our ring. So for us, it's the simplest solution, your own self-custody.
We don't run any wallets, but just use wallets that uses us.
Nice.
I would just say best UI, best UX, best experience from us.
We've been in the business for 12 years, never been hacked, and we still secure 25% of the crypto market cap.
What can I say? Number one downloaded wallet. So if you can't trust it, then who can?
All right, so there you have it. Let's give it up a round of applause for our panelists. That's all we have for this session. My name is Fred, and we'll see you all around, outside or next year. All right, thank you.